City Jazz Sessions is about great music, arts, and entertainment. We are located in St. Louis, Missouri, and available to performance art lovers worldwide. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. You can email us at cityjazzsessions@gmail.com.
Hello, everybody. So I am Laka, one of your hosts today with City Jazz Sessions. I have Leon Davis, also host, co-host, and Warren Harper. And our special guest of honor today is Chris Swan. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's great to see you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chris is a friend of City Jazz Sessions. If you go back on our videos, you will see one from back in the early days, an interview and with him. So thanks so much for having us back or being back. And you've had a lot of changes since the last time you sat in with City Jazz Sessions. You moved from St. Louis to New York and just kind of tell us a little bit about, what's been going on since we saw you the last time. And also for people who don't know you, tell us about, who you are as a musician and what you do.
Sure. Sounds good. Yeah, I was just trying to think about when it was the last time I was on. And I think it has been quite a long time. So yeah, just good to see all you guys, and yeah, good to get caught up. And but yeah, my name's Chris Swan. I am a musician. I'm a piano player, singer, songwriter, rapper, label owner. Uh, just what all musicians do, just trying to hustle a living in music, right? So you got to do a million different things to piece it all together. But yeah, I would say the main thing is I play piano and I write music and perform. So I've been yeah, professional musician. I mean, since I was 12, I'm 44, so I can't do math. But however long that is, been doing it.
A long time.
Yeah, a long time, 32 years. Is that right? Wow, that's crazy. So, yeah,
Wow.
I mean, it's just what I've always loved. From when I was a little kid, I just loved figuring out songs, and then I learned how to write my own songs, and then that was it for me, man. I mean, I always count myself really blessed because a lot of people, have to try to figure out what they want to do with their lives or what they want to be when they grow up, right? And I always knew that from a really young age. So yeah, so I lived in St. Louis for 20 years. I'm from Michigan, but I moved to St. Louis to actually go to college. I went to Greenville College, which is now Greenville University. It's in Greenville, Illinois.
Hmm.
So that got me down to the St. Louis area, and then I fell in love with St. Louis and decided to stay there. And I was in a band at the time called LP Outsiders, and we were like a kind of hip hop R&B fusion band. And so we met in college. We decided to move to St. Louis, and we toured the country for 6 years and put out a bunch of records and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's what kind of got me to St. Louis, and St. Louis became home. So I lived in St. Louis for 20 years, almost exactly. And then I've always had this dream to move to New York City. I've always wanted to live in New York. Every time I come to New York, I don't want to leave. It's just like, oh man, this is where
Yeah,
everything that's cool happens. Like you've been, it's
right.
just energy, right? And the culture and the music and the art and just all of it. And so,
So
yeah,
how long have you been in New York now?
so I moved to New York in February. I moved here, so I've only been here.
Okay. So during
What,
the pandemic, huh?
yeah, I've only been here 5 months. I moved right in the middle of the pandemic. I
As everyone else was leaving New York, you decided to go.
exactly. I saw it as an opportunity because I was in kind of a phase of my life where I was kind of transitioning some things. I was selling my house. I kind of wanted to declutter and simplify my life, so I was selling all my stuff. I had a business in St. Louis. It was a music school, and I was ready to sell that. So I was selling my business. So it just felt like, I'm doing all this. Now's the time to do it. If you're going to do it now. Plus, with the pandemic, um, everybody was leaving New York, so they needed renters. So it was a buyer's market in New York, man. The prices for rent in apartments is just unheard of. So
Yeah.
when all those things kind of came together, I just kind of decided like, now's the time. So I'm going to move to New York City in the middle of this crazy time in our
And
lives.
how do you like it so far?
I love it. I love it. I always say there's no place I'd rather be in the world. Like, it's funny. I haven't been here since 2005. I didn't take a trip out here or anything. I found an apartment online. I applied. I just kind of like, I'm just going to go out and just go. So there's that part of you that's like, am I going to get there and just like hate it? You know what I mean? Is this going
Right.
to be too much or whatever? But no, totally the opposite experience. There's been a lot to learn. It's been very overwhelming. It's a lot going on in this city, especially as a musician. It's really overwhelming trying to plug into that community. But I'm learning all that stuff a little bit at a time. But I love it here. It's an amazing place. It's an amazing city. And I love being here during this time because even since I've been here, things have been opening up and coming back to life. Another reason I wanted to be here at this time because I wanted to be here when everything started kind of coming back. And Broadway's coming back in September and all this kind of stuff. So it's just a really fun time to be in New York City. And it has not let me down. I love this city more and more every day.
Yeah, we were just talking about how, you just kind of took the bull by the horns. You didn't want to have any regrets. And I think that's a great exercise, even to think about our mortality in general, because I feel like we live like we're going to live forever. But, when you really think about, I have a finite time here, and what do I really want to be doing? So for you, you had a dream to go to New York, so acted on that dream.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, I think, and yeah, we were talking a little bit about that exercise of just, I don't know, I got it off some podcast or something, but I was just like, that's genius. So every once in a while, I just do this exercise of like, if I was on my deathbed right now, like the doctor told me I had 2 hours to live, what would my regrets be? And write them down. And then, all right, that just became my bucket list. That just became my goals. Like that just became what I want to do with my life, And so, yeah, New York is one of those things on there amongst other things. But yeah, New York was a big one. So it's just, yeah, I mean, just do it. Just, there's always a way. And it's funny, when I was trying to move here, a lot of people were supportive, but also a lot of people are kind of quick to say, oh man, how are you going to do that? Do you know how expensive New York is? And how are you going to make money, and how are you going to do this and whatever. Right. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm aware of all of that. Yes. But, I mean, are you just going to let that like shut you down every time you want to do something? Like there's always a way. I just kept thinking, yeah, but there's people who live in New York City, right? There's 8 million people who live there. So there's no reason I can't live in New York City. Like if they can, I can. There's a way.
Yeah.
All those people can do it. Why can't you?
Why can't I? Exactly. And I think a lot of people come up with the excuses to kind of let themselves off the hook. So they're like, I don't really have to try. It's too hard. It's too expensive.
Exactly.
But that's kind of just becomes an excuse to not really pursue things that you really want to do because it's scary. It's scary to do new things. And so yeah, like once I started researching it, I just started knocking those objections out. I found an apartment that was in my price range. I found a way to make a living. I found an apartment, like all the stuff, it took some work, but it was not impossible. So you just got to take that one step at a time.
We actually talked to a lot of artists that are from New York. And it's obviously appealing because there's more opportunities there, there's more gigs, there's more venues, there's just more of everything. So did you kind of feel limited in any way in St. Louis, or was it just that dream?
Yeah, the kind of funny thing is most people move to New York to pursue like a career, you know,
Mhm.
and that's not why I came to New York. I came to New York because I wanted to live in New York City, just because I love the city.
Mm-hmm.
Now, now that I'm here, yes, there are opportunities, and even before I moved, I'm like, I definitely am open to like exploring what could happen in New York, right? Like, you know, if anything is going to happen anywhere, it can happen in New York City. There's a million opportunities. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and to explore musical opportunities, but it's not why I moved here. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So, which I think is different for, I think a lot of people come here, I'm going to make it in New York City, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
that was not really, it's like, nah, I just want to live in New York City, man. I just want to be there and be around the culture and the music and the art. And then, yeah. So all that to say, then moving here and trying to find your way in is challenging. I didn't have any friends here. I didn't really know anybody. I had a couple friends of friends that were around the area, but nobody that I was like, I had one friend who lived here. And ironically, when I moved here, he moved to Chicago 2 weeks later. So, you know what I mean? So, which is fine, but it's just like, I didn't have any network. I didn't have any real,
Sure.
it's starting from scratch. So, so that can be overwhelming because you're the small fish in the big pond. And in St. Louis, like I had the same feeling when I moved to St. Louis. I remember vividly driving into St. Louis, looking at the arch. I was in college, and I was like, "I'm going to play a gig in this town someday, right?" You know,
All
because
right.
that was amazing. Because I grew up in a small town, you know, so to play in St. Louis, that was a huge goal. And then I got my first gig, and then I got another gig, and then, you know how it goes. And after
Right.
20 years, you know, I had plenty of gigs and all kinds of gigs and was doing the stuff I wanted to do. And it was awesome.
And everybody
So
knows you.
yeah, well, yeah, you know, I got to play with a lot of great people, which introduced me to a lot of great people. And I'm very thankful and blessed to be a part of that community. And even though I don't live there anymore, I still consider myself part of that musical community because I think it always will be kind of my musical home
Right.
because that's, you know, that's where I really came up in music was in St. Louis. So,
Hmm.
um, so yeah, I think it got to the point where it's like I definitely want to pursue some other things
Mm-hmm.
that maybe aren't possible here in St. Louis. But honestly, that's not really why I moved. I didn't move to New York to get away from St. Louis. I moved to New York because I wanted to be in New York. You know,
Yeah.
it was actually
Right.
hard to leave St. Louis. I love St. Louis. I still really love St. Louis and miss it. You know, so it wasn't like I was trying to get away from that. It was just because I wanted to be in New York City and
So
pursue
Sure.
kind
what is different about New York City and St. Louis that was driving that desire?
That's a that's a really good question. I think it's a lot of things. I think it's the pace of the city. I actually really love. So I live in Manhattan, and I really love the like hustle bustle. I mean, you walk out the door and everyone's just going for it. You know what I mean? There's just like an excitement in the air. I also really like the tall buildings. It's kind of dumb, but
Hmm.
you know, it's just like, but it's amazing. These amazing buildings and like amazing churches and amazing architecture all around you at all times. I think it's like everything I like about St. Louis, just times a million, like times 1,000, right? Like a million might be, a little, but you know what I mean. It's just like all the awesome
Yeah.
things about St. Louis that I love, but it's just you know, amplified here, you know? So like St. Louis just has a great music scene and great musicians, man. It's an amazing musical town. And then New York City is that, and then just the best of the best of the best too, you know? So like everybody we go to the bistro to see in St. Louis, right? They're playing in Central Park right now. Like I can just go walk over and see, you know, I just saw, you know, like Chris Potter and Marquise Hill and you know, so all these like
Hmm.
you know, amazing musicians are they're here. You know what I mean? So I think it's just kind of
Definitely.
that, like being closer to where a lot of like the real, because I don't want to say like I'm not downplaying St. Louis at all. St. Louis is amazing musical history and amazing musical talent. I just think it's like in New York City, it's just like, man, this is it though. This is where the industry is. This is where the best of the best live. So that's definitely a big part of it. But also, I just really love the history of New York City and its, place in American history and all that stuff. So just seeing the Statue of Liberty and going to Times Square and all the touristy stuff, I love it. Maybe after I'm here for 10 years, that'll wear off, but I don't think it will, because even in St. Louis, I would still go to the Arch all the time. Like, I love history, and I love St. Louis's history and the musical history there, and I never got enough of that. So again, in New York, it's just like that. It's just times 1,000. It's just like, oh, there's even like so much more of it here. You know what I mean? So there's just so much to take in. And so, yeah, I think it's just all the things that St. Louis had is just all that, and then some new stuff too.
So how did you happen to end up in Manhattan?
Yeah, so that's the big question when you decide to move to New York City, is like, where are you going to live, right? Because which borough are you going to live in, and then which neighborhood are you going to live in? I started off with Brooklyn because all my favorite rappers are from Brooklyn. So I was like, I'm going to live in Brooklyn, BK, that's going to be dope, you know. But as I started talking to some people who lived here, my friend who was here at the time, and some others, just kind of got a better picture of what the kind of neighborhoods are like and what I was kind of looking for. And I realized, like, if you're going to move to New York City, like, move to Manhattan, like, at least for a year or two, like, live in Manhattan. And maybe I might move to Brooklyn. I like Brooklyn a lot. And so maybe I'd move out there eventually. But at first, I want to be right in Manhattan, because that's where all the
action is. Yeah,
that's where all the excitement is. I want to walk out of my front door and just be right in the middle of it, you know?
Okay.
So then it's where in Manhattan, because there's a million different neighborhoods and sections. And so I settled on the Upper East Side because it's a little more residential. It's just a little bit removed from the crazy, but I have 2 trains that are within a block and a half from me, and I can be in Times Square and the Theater District or downtown or whatever in 15, 20 minutes. So a friend of mine said, it doesn't matter where you live. If you live in Manhattan, you can get anywhere you want to get pretty quick. So then, because at first I was like, I want to live in the Theater District and Hell's Kitchen because I want to be by Broadway, And he's like, man, it's going to be crazy, and that's not necessary because you can get there no matter where you live. And now that I'm here, I get that. But I was doing all this without coming here. I hadn't been here in like 15 years. So I relied on a lot of friends who live here or had lived here in the past to kind of help me sort through that. But I also really wanted to be by Central Park. I'm 4 blocks from Central Park, and that was really important.
Nice.
So
very nice.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So your website is Chris Swan Hip Hop?
That's right.
So what made you focus on hip hop?
Yeah, good question. I grew up, it's funny, I grew up in a town called the Alpine Village. It couldn't be more removed from hip hop culture. And so way up in northern Michigan, and I don't know, I grew up in the 90s, man, and I just loved 90s hip hop, that classic era of hip hop. Even the 80s stuff with Run DMC. I mean, up there was a lot what was maybe on pop radio at first. But then as I got more into it, I just discovered that I really loved the music and the culture. And I had, so when I started writing songs when I was 10 or 11. I had a band when I was maybe 12 or 13.
Oh, wow.
So it was a hip hop group, as a duo. It was called He and Me. And we just started doing shows, and just started playing like churches and elk lodges, basically who would ever let these little kids come play. You know what I mean? And, but yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know why I chose, I feel like, and this is a super cliche thing to say, but I don't think I ever chose it. I think it just kind of, for whatever reason, it chose me, right? That's what I was trying to say, because it's kind of the,
right.
But it's true, though.
That happens, though. I think the realest things that are in your just DNA and fabric, like, you don't choose, they just come out of you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, for whatever reason. And it's just, even if you're far, I was far away from Brooklyn, it's in northern Michigan. I wasn't where hip hop was growing
Right.
up, or really, but for some reason it still resonated with me. I don't know if that's something we're born with or what, but it was, for a long time, all I listened to was hip hop, R&B, and jazz. Like, that's all I listened to. I mean, up to like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Like, that's
Oh,
all
wow.
I listened to for a long time. And now recently, I've started to like some other stuff. Probably more than 5 years, maybe the last 10 years. But I don't know why. But it just, yeah, I think it just chose me. It just resonated with me. I knew I wanted to do it. I wanted to be a rapper. I wanted to make beats. I
Yeah.
just wanted to be, a part of that movement.
When
So
I first heard you on some of your CDs doing some rap stuff, I had to stop. I'm like, dang, dude is flowing, man. I mean, it was just coming out real natural. And, I'm like, okay, I'm digging this, man. I was
thanks.
shocked, though, because I didn't know you had it in you.
Thanks. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I don't know that I maybe don't look the part or whatever, which is fine. I used to try really hard to look all like
Hip hop is
street hip hop. Yeah, totally. I grew up in the 90s, so I had all the Carl Kanai and all the, Living Color and all the
Yeah.
Mhm.
Jenko, whatever. Yeah, I had all the cool stuff. But I think as I got older, I just realized, like, that's just a lot of work to try to keep up on that. So
Mhm.
I kind of just dress pretty simply now. So anyway, yeah, I know I don't always look like the rapper persona, but I actually kind of like that, because I think I was trying really hard to be more than I was, and I think I like that. I like to put across that, like, you don't have to fit anyone's exact picture of what you think you're supposed to be or whatever. Like, you can
Right.
Mhm.
just be kind of a nerdy guy who likes rap music, and that's what you. I mean, whatever's in you, as long as it's legitimately in you, and you're not just
Right.
trying to, like, be cool and do something that's, you know what I mean. There is a point
It's
where
more
it's
authentic that way. You're like, this is
authentic.
me. I just happen to like hip hop, and I don't have to be like everyone else who's doing hip hop. Like,
Right.
I
Yeah.
can just be me and also do hip hop.
And that's
Exactly.
exactly how it was. I'm like, that was him, and that's what it came across. I'm like, okay, I'm digging this. He's a rapper too.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah.
man. Thanks
Like
for checking
hip
it.
hop
Mhm.
and jazz, like I don't necessarily like think of those two genres as someone who will like both. So
Yeah.
how did you, I mean, how did that happen? You started off doing hip hop in 11, 12, 13-ish, and then where did the jazz come in?
Yeah. That's a good point. I think so. I really got into jazz when I got into college, because I had a really great teacher that kind of opened my eyes to that whole world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I got into Frank Sinatra, and I got into Thelonious Monk,
Yeah.
and Michael. That's when I got into Michael Franks, which to this day is probably my favorite artist of all time. Um, but also, all the bebop stuff and hard bop, and like, it was really college. I started hanging out with other musicians who liked it too, and so that really turned me on to it. Um, so yeah, I think, up until college, like, I was in jazz band in high school. I don't know why I
Right.
did that, but we played Take the A Train and stuff like that. Um, and I think that was the first time I was kind of, you know, um, brought into the world of jazz. I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I like swing. It's cool. I don't know. Like, I just like the swing. I like the feel of it.
Mhm.
I think honestly, Sinatra is probably one that kind of got me into. Like, I like the songs, I like his voice, and that kind of got me into like swing, and then got into kind of bassy, and then Monk and Bill Evans and all that stuff. So yeah, it's interesting, because my mom and dad listened to Christian music, classical music, and Elvis. So I didn't have any hip hop, R&B, or jazz influence at all growing up, and
Right.
I just kind of found my way. But yeah, jazz specifically was in college. I really fell in love with it, and then um, started a band, and we started doing gigs. So that's how I really got into it, because I was like, oh, we can make money playing parties. So
There you go.
we started the AM Jazz Trio, it was called, and so started doing gigs, and then once you start playing jazz, you're like, well, I need to learn more about this. So that's when I really started listening and learning.
Yeah. You mentioned Frank Sinatra. Now that I think about it, when I look back at him, he was really ahead of his time. I mean, you couldn't put him in a box, and he just let it out there, and he was really broad.
He was. I mean, he was just one of the greatest singers, you know, and not traditionally how we think of great singers, like American Idol singers, you know, he's not
Mhm.
that kind of singer. He's great because he just had a swing and a swagger
Mhm.
that, and again, no one really had it like him. There's definitely been people since who, you know, try to
Yeah.
do it. And there's a lot of people who are great, you know, really great. But yeah, I think he was just one of the first and the biggest. But he just, his phrasing, you know, he
Mhm.
didn't have much of a
Yeah.
range. He had like an octave and a half, maybe. Like he
Yeah.
didn't have a range, you know, but
But
he had
his
his
timing
time.
was weird. It was like he was in his own box there.
Yeah, he was an instrumentalist, man. I mean, kind of like
Mhm.
Ella Fitzgerald in some, you know, of the females.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
You know, Ella was really known for that.
Mhm.
He's kind of the male equivalent of that. I think he was just very much thought of it like an instrumentalist, and because of that, his phrasing was just different, and it just swung. Man, he was just a swinging
Yeah.
singer. It
Yeah.
just felt really good, and because he was popular, he got all the good songs. So he has all these like great songs, you know,
Right.
that he made
Right.
really popular as well. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
he
he's one of
opened
my.
doors for other artists too. He kind of opened up society and music.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that happened with him too, right? Like I
Mhm.
think crossing some of that jazz over into the pop culture a little
Yeah,
bit more.
yeah.
You know?
And he racially integrated some of the venues that were really against it. He was pushing the
He-
envelope.
that's true. He was really a big part of that. He's a really big advocate of that as well, which is
Yeah.
awesome, man. Yeah.
Hats off to
So
Frank.
let me ask you a question. Are you, uh, what are you doing to support yourself now? Are you doing music?
Yeah, so good question. Yeah, so I don't really have many gigs yet. Like I said, I didn't really have any connections, and I didn't move here for career. I kind of just wanted to get settled and plugged in. I haven't, so I'm playing at a church here. I'm playing in a church band. It's a great band. I mean, like these guys are like legit heavy hitters, like just really great players, man. And so I just started going to this church because I knew it's the Redeemer East Side. I knew the former pastor as an author, and I've read some of his books. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to go. I'm in New York, so I'm going to go to his church, right? And then, but listening to this band, I was just like, man, these cats are just like swinging, like they're really good. They would take secular songs and do like instrumental jazz versions of them in a church, and I was like, that's just so cool, you know. So it's like, man, it's just I love it. It would be cool to just know these guys, be able to hang out with them, and just through some circumstances, I ended up meeting the worship director, and she's like, well, send me an email. And I sent her an email, and she's like, hey, we need a synth player who can sing. So you're in. So I got this gig. It was just, I'd been here a couple months, maybe at the most.
Mhm.
So I was able to get that gig at the church. So doing that has been really, really good. And because of that, I've started to meet a lot of other musicians through
Yeah.
that gig, like the guys in the band, but also the guys that they know. So that's a really long roundabout way to say is that's the only gig I'm playing right now. And honestly, I'm just kind of taking my time to feel where I want to fit in to the music scene here, because
Right.
it goes on and on and on. But I was a piano bar guy in St. Louis for a long time. That's how I made my living for 12 years or so, doing dueling pianos in piano bars. I hated every single day of it, which
Oh
is
no.
an awful thing to say. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm also very grateful for it. I got to do a lot of really cool things. I got to play in the Caribbean islands for like 5, 6 years. I basically would go live in Aruba for a month and play in Aruba, and then go to St. Martin and live there for a
Oh
month.
wow.
So yeah, I got to do some awesome things and meet some awesome people and travel the world. So I'm very, very thankful for it. But it's not what I ever got into music to do, is to play Piano Man and Sweet Caroline and Brown Eyed Girl every night, which is what that is, right?
Right. Right.
Anybody who's been in a band knows that like those are like the songs you don't want people to request, Mustang Sally and all that, right? That's what you do. and piano bars. So it was cool. It was good to be able to make a living. I'm thankful for the experience I got and all that I learned from it. But after doing it for 12 years, it kind of made me hate music. Because all I would listen to was songs I needed to learn. When you do piano bars, you have to know everything. So you're constantly learning songs and you have no bandwidth to just listen to music you like anymore. All I would do is listen to my songs to learn playlist, which is full of songs that I don't like because you just have to play what people want to hear, you know? So it's just either really crappy pop songs or, you know, Billy Joel, Elton John stuff. I like some of their songs, but I'm not like a huge fan. But like stuff that I want to play, like Stevie Wonder or, you know, that barely ever gets requested. So you're not really playing the stuff you want. You're playing stuff that people want to hear.
Right.
And so all that, that was part of the transitions. When I moved to New York, I kind of want to retire from the piano bar thing. So when I got here, of course, all the people who wanted to offer me gigs were piano bar gigs. So, and there's actually a piano bar literally right around the corner. It's on the next block over. And
Wow.
I know the person who knows the owner. So it's like, oh my gosh, when I got here, it was like I had a decision to make. Like I could just start doing piano bars again and make a living. And I chose not to. I chose not to because it just, I don't want to get sucked back in. It's so hard to get out. I decided to get out and I've been really starting to love music again. I've been listening to music and playing stuff that I like. And I haven't had that in probably 10 years. So I'm like, I really want to protect that. I don't want to just start doing these gigs to make money and then get really bitter and cynical about music again. You know what I mean? So that's been hard because I could be doing these gigs, but I've chosen not to. So because of that, I got to find a way to make a living. So I was doing, I teach piano lessons online. So I have a few students that I teach. I was doing Shipped for a while, delivering groceries. Tough in Manhattan without a car.
Without a car. Oh,
Without
man.
a car. So you're using the subway. It's a thing. You can do it, but it's really, really tough. So I just started reaching out, putting out applications and stuff. And just going back to like getting a normal job. I haven't had a job in like 15 years. I've always been self-employed as a musician or teacher. So it's been a new chapter of just trying to kind of make ends meet while I kind of try to figure out what's next. So I work for a plumber right now. That's what I do for a living, which is insane. Because if you knew me, you know I'm not a handy person. I don't even know how to use a drill. Like I am not that guy at all. And I told him that. I'm like, hey man, I don't know how to do any of this, but if you want to train me, I'm in because I need a job. And so he's like, yeah, I'll train you. So I've been working for a plumber for about 2 months. He's been showing me how to do it. Man, those guys work hard. I've never had a job like that.
Done any soldering yet?
Yes. So soldering, I've done some soldering. That is just a nightmare. Like trying to figure out where to hold the torch, where to hold the solder. Just, oh my gosh. But man, I have a great boss who just really takes the time to like show me everything and train me and super patient with all my dumb questions. And he shows me stuff over and over and over. And the cool thing is I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot and learning some things that will come in handy, you know, around the house. So
somewhere later in life, you'll use some of those skills probably.
Totally.
Oh, sure.
Totally.
So how about you get into your blog a little bit? Because I started following you and you write about some very interesting topics. I'm a dietitian by trade, so I've seen some of your posts about you know, your weight loss journey, and then also your journey with sobriety. And so I kind of, you don't mind talking about a little off the music subject, but how you kind of got into blogging and sharing, you know, some personal things and why you chose to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about that stuff. So so I got sober about 5 years ago. And then I actually joined Overeaters Anonymous, which is like AA but for food, about 3 years ago, and that's when my life completely changed. The 12-step program of recovery saved my life, no doubt, and changed my life. I was 505 pounds at the biggest I got. I was having, it was just all the things. I could barely walk, couldn't breathe, pre-diabetic, having chest pains constantly, on and on and on I could go. But I was really scared and really, it was not good. I was either going to be in a wheelchair or I was going to die pretty soon.
Yeah, I
And
want
so I
to pause just a second, like, because I've always heard about the 12-step program, and I actually also work with individuals who are in recovery, like on their nutrition. But I don't really actually know a lot about the 12-step program. And I've heard someone say that everyone should do the 12-step program. Like everyone could absolutely benefit from it. So would you mind just pausing and giving us a little bit of synopsis of what it is?
Totally. Yeah. Love to. Love to. And that's totally what I think we all say that, but that's totally the thing I say too. Is like everybody, whether you have an addiction problem or not, everyone should go through the 12 steps because it's not really about you start it because you're desperate because you can't stop. For me, it was I quit drinking on my own, but it didn't really solve the real problem. And so when I quit drinking, I went to food and I just started eating even more and I gained a bunch of weight. So it wasn't until I was really scared for my health that I got desperate enough to ask for help, which led to this 12-step program. But yeah, it's not just about you come in because you're trying to, oh, I need to just stop eating. I just need to lose weight, But as soon as you get into it, you realize that that's just a symptom. That's not the real problem. And so the 12-step program is really about spiritual wellness. It's about spiritual health. And then if you do that work, whatever addiction you have is going to get better because you're doing the spiritual work, whether it's drinking or food or drugs or whatever it is. We're all just using these substances as ways to comfort ourselves and soothe ourselves because we can't deal with our emotions. We can't deal with it. Always comes down to resentment, shame, and fear. It always comes down to one of those three things or all three: fear, resentment, and shame. So either I'm just terrified and anxious, or I just feel resentful towards other people who have done me wrong, and I'm angry all the time, or I'm just full of self-loathing and hate myself for things I've done. You know what I mean? Or things I'm continuing to do. So the 12-step program is really genius because it takes people like me who are super cynical about can be super cynical. I've learned to be less cynical, but like cynical about life or about God. And it lets you take one little step at a time back to a relationship with God. We call it our higher power. So some people don't like the word God because that feels like religion, and that's a whole thing that people are bitter towards. And that was part of my story too, is I grew up in the church, but I kind of walked away from it because I was kind of bitter about ways people have hurt me or what people in the church have done, or I started doubting, is God really there? And so I just kind of walked away from it. The 12-step program is designed to bring you back to a higher power, or for me, I call the higher power God. So the 12 steps, but a lot of people who are addicted or stuck in a cycle are very much, I can do this on my own. I don't need God. I don't believe in God. The church is bad. They just hurt people. There's a lot of bitterness there. So the steps are so genius because they just one step at a time get you back to saying, okay, maybe there is a God. Maybe I'm willing to surrender my will over to this God. You know what I mean? But it starts from the very beginning of just saying, number one is I'm powerless. I need help. I need help. And for me, I was so scared I was going to die. I'm like, I need help. So I'm powerless over this thing. And then two is to admit that maybe there's a higher power. Okay. Maybe it doesn't have to be the Catholic Church God or whatever, but can you just say that there's some force in the universe that is bigger than me? And am I willing, step three, to surrender to that power? And so really it's just about saying, I need help, and surrendering over to a higher power. Sometimes that's just your sponsor or your meeting or just the group or the program. You know, if you're not ready to say there's a God, but the point is you need to be willing to like surrender, let go, humble yourself. So that's kind of the first three steps. And then once you kind of do that, then 4 and 5 is kind of about taking personal inventory. So resentment, shame, fear. You write down on paper all that stuff that you're holding on to. That's quite an exercise. It usually takes a long time, but you just get it all down. That's all the stuff that's making us sick. It's all the stuff I'm so mad about or so afraid of, or all the beliefs I have about myself and why I hate myself. You got to get all that stuff out on paper. On paper.
So
And then
the substances are really a distraction from not the substances or food or whatever it is, or social media, anything that it's just more of a distraction from what is really going on with us inside.
yes, that's exactly it. So it's getting clear of all that stuff we're holding on to, so that we can be connected to the world again and feel good about ourselves again and feel excited about life again, so that we don't need these substances anymore, because we are now able to like live a life where we can face our emotions and we're not hiding, you know. We're not trying to numb out or hide with food or alcohol or whatever. So it's just, yeah, it's getting all that stuff down on paper, admitting it to another person and to God, and then making your amends. So going to people you've heard, you know, that's the one that most people know about 12 steps. You have to make your amends. So people you've heard, you need to go have a conversation with those people. But the idea is so you can be free. You can be free and allowed to love yourself again and feel connected to God again, and let the sunshine back in, you know? And when you let the sunshine back in, suddenly you don't need the food and the alcohol like you used to.
And I can see where the making amends, just even having those difficult conversations, that's also something we tend to avoid. If there's some sort of conflict or angst or some hurt, like that's just more avoiding when you're not having those conversations.
Yeah.
So I could see how that would help with getting back connected.
Yep, absolutely. We're just, think about it. Whenever there's something you're just kind of putting off in your mind, it's always kind of bugging you, but you're just kind of like pushing it off. Most of us have hundreds of those things and we don't even really realize it because we just kind of shove it down, right? And then we don't know why. Why do I always want to eat when I'm just, eat or drink or smoke weed or whatever it is? Not that, like, why it can even be like sex or, like
it
porn.
It could be anything. Could be an addiction.
Just to keep your mind off the real issues.
Exactly. Yes. You just can't sit with yourself and be content. It's because that thing is always like right there. So we're always trying to distract ourselves with substances. And so the key is to get clear of all that, and then you don't need the distraction anymore.
And I bet the amends part is hard because of probably the guilt factor that you're feeling, and it makes it really difficult.
Yeah, and it's embarrassing sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's even there's sometimes legal ramifications, there's some guys have done some stuff. Like we all have stuff it's really about getting everything out of your closet that you're scared to talk about. Step 5, you talk about it with another person, but in step 9, you're making amends. So there's some rules around that so that you're not hurting the other person, just to clear your conscience.
Right.
But yes, you know what I mean? But if there is something that they know about and there's a rub between you, you need to go like, hey, I stole money from you. I owe you money. I stole this money and I need to pay you back. How can I pay you back? That sometimes it's like that. Or sometimes it's just, I'm sorry I hurt you, or I'm sorry I cheated on you, or whatever it is, it can be a lot of different things. But yeah, it's hard because it's really not humiliating, but humbling. and it can be awkward, but it's totally worth it because when you're done, you get off the phone or you leave. 99, all, I think pretty much all of my amends, just about everybody was just like, I forgive you. I really appreciate you telling me that. You can let go of it. Like most people gave me that blessing and you're free. You're like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. If somebody doesn't give you that, that's okay. They don't have to, but you did your part. You did your part and you can be free from it. So yeah, it's a challenge and it's hard, but it's totally worth it. When you're done, you're like a new person.
So do you go to meetings? I know for some people that's a big help.
Yeah.
Being in a community with other people doing the same thing.
Totally, absolutely. It's huge. So yes, I go to meetings. I have a sponsor. So we have sponsors like a person who has recovery that kind of helps you, a mentor kind of thing. So I have a sponsor. I go to meetings. I have a nutritionist that I work with my food. So I have a meal plan that I follow. I weigh and measure all my food. I don't make any food decisions on my own. I have a written plan. This is what I eat every day. I weigh and measure. I mean, if I go to a restaurant, I take my scale with me. Like it's a hard rule. It is not. I don't mess around with it because if I mess around with that, the whole thing crumbles. Like I have to stay. My abstinence is number one. So yeah. So I have a team. Nutritionist, sponsor meetings. I couldn't do it without those things.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Leon, did you have, I know we're going to be wrapping up pretty soon. I know Leon had some questions.
Sure. So explain Luppy for me.
So Luppy was a nickname I got in college. When I went to Greenville College in Greenville, Illinois, when I got there, this has probably changed now, but when I was there wasn't a whole lot of hip hop artists there. It was mostly like what we called CCM. I don't know if that's still a thing, contemporary Christian music. So I don't know if you remember the band Jars of Clay, but they were big right at that time. This was mid-90s. They had a big top 40 song. They were from Greenville College. So they used all that Jars of Clay publicity to get people to come to the school. So anyway, long story short, there was a lot of music majors, but not really anybody doing hip hop. So I got the nickname Loop. It was originally Loop because from looping beats, like making beats, taking samples of looping beats. So it was Loop. And then that just kind of turned into Luppy. And then, it just kind of stuck. And for a long time, no one even called me Chris. Like I was just Luppy. Like, which then, in my drinking days, it took on a whole nother connotation of just being the life of the party, Luppy, woo, I used that a lot in my piano bar gigs and stuff like that. So, but yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
So any of your St. Louis friends come to New York to hang out with you yet?
Not many yet. I'm trying to get everybody to come hang out. Like, come on, dude, let's go. My family was just here, which is cool. My sister's family, and then my mom and dad are coming in September, which is cool. But I haven't been able to get any of my friends to commit. A lot of soft, like, yeah, that sounds great, we'll do it. But it takes a lot of time and money. I get it. So, but eventually, my goal is to get a lot of people to come hang out with me here because New York is super fun by yourself, but it's even more fun with somebody. A friend from out of town, you know what I mean? Because you get to show them around and you get to, So yeah, I'm trying to get all my friends to come visit.
So, New York has a reputation as a really hard town. Just from the aspect of tourists getting robbed and crime. And I just recently did a podcast about a shooting in New York. What has been your experience as far as the crime goes?
I'm so glad you asked that question because that's one of my favorite things about New York. So me too, like we all hear these stereotypes, like New Yorkers are jerks, they're rude, crime is bad, you got to watch where you're going all the time, you're going to get robbed, you're going to, people are going to take advantage of you. And honestly, that has not been my experience at all. Like, certainly those people exist. You know, there are rough people everywhere you go. There are people like that in St. Louis. You know,
Mhm.
I had, you know, same experiences in St. Louis. There's some people that are not so friendly, and then there's nice people, and you just, I think you find what you're looking for. So if you focus on the good-hearted people, you start to see more and more, and that's who you attract into your life. So when
Mm.
I got here, I just remember kind of being consciously like, I'm just going to be really nice to people and bring that Midwestern, you know, charm or whatever. And but as it turns out, like people people are the same everywhere. We all want to be loved. We all want to connect. We all want to help each other. And what I realized a lot very quickly is if I just show a little kindness to somebody, they react. So just like the lady at the grocery store, you know, if I'm just like, hey, how are you? Her eyes light up and we connect and and she wants to talk to me. She's not like, I'm a New Yorker, we don't do that, don't talk to me, you know what I mean? She's a person, so she's like, yeah, oh, I'm doing great, thanks for asking, how are you, you know what I mean? So I found that out really quickly, that um it's kind of a stereotype that we put on people. Definitely there are the hardened New Yorkers. I mean, I've seen those guys too, for sure. But truth is, there's a lot of all kinds of people here. There's all kinds of transient people. There's all kinds of, you know, people from the Midwest here. You know, I'm not the only guy from the Midwest in New York City, right? Like there's people
Mhm.
from all over the world. So actually, I have found that most people are actually very kind, very much want to help you. If you just ask, hey, how do I do this? I see at the subway all the time. People are always like getting lost on the subway and don't know where to go. People always stop to help somebody. They're like, yeah, do you need help? What do you need? Like, that is not what you think of when you think of New York.
Right.
Like, you're
That
told
is
people
not the way they display New York.
exactly. And it's just, it's not true. It's not accurate. I will say it is a big city and it's busy. And yes, walking down the street, you know, you're not stopping and talking to everybody. Like everybody's focused. And, but it's like that in St. Louis too. Like, you know, to not like just, you know, become a mark for somebody. Like, you know, who to kind of
Mhm.
avoid and who to like talk to, you know. And so it's just like that, you know, times 100. You know, New York is very busy. So yeah, you don't make eye contact with everybody and talk to everybody. But I was already kind of used to that in St. Louis. So
Thank you so much for talking to us. So excited to see what else you do in New York, because I know you're going to take it by storm when, as things continue to, you know, open back up and you figure out the city and the scene. So where should people go to follow you? I definitely want them to check out your blog, um, for sure. But where should they go to follow you and keep track of what you're doing?
yeah, thanks for asking and thanks for having me. It's really fun to talk to you. And um, ChrisSwanHipHop.com. That is the best place to go. So Chris Swan, Swan is just SWAN. Well, you see it on the screen there, I guess. So ChrisSwanHipHop.com. It's where you can find all my music. You can find all my social media stuff. You can find, you know, streaming music or, you know, CDs if you want to buy CDs. It also has my website that has all my gigs on it, stuff like that. Down at the bottom, I think it says piano performance or something. I should know what that says, but that's also on that website as well. So like my gigs and stuff like that and gig calendar. So it's all there at ChrisSwanHipHop.com. Come say hi.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
City Jazz Sessions is brought to you by St. Louis City Jazz, a 501c3 company dedicated to music education and appreciation. The CEO is Magic Man 50, and for more ways to connect with City Jazz Sessions, visit cityjazzsessions.wixsite.com/St. Louis. The City Jazz Sessions team includes host, content director, and guest coordinator, jazz great Ronnie Barrage. Follow Ronnie at ronniebarrage.biz. Host, website designer, graphic artist, content director, and guest coordinator, singing sensation Laka. Discover more about Laka at lakamusic.com. Additional production services are provided by Lions Den Productions. Go to thelionsdenstl.wixsite.com/home. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe for more great content.